All right, and good morning. Let's start this lesson by listening to the words of this song.
Here's a man that was sent down as a gift into this world, born to stand and raise a standard, given a plan that would help to shape the very heart of man throughout the land, to proclaim Jesus, to proclaim Jesus. And you change the world by your love. You change the world by how you lived your life. You change the world by your stand for Christ. You change the world. You change the world. A heart of gold and a smile that brought such joy deep down within, causing us to be encouraged. You fought the fight, and the courage to fight still lives in us, 'cause now you're gone to be with Jesus, to be with Jesus. But you change the world by your love. You change the world by how you lived your life. You change the world by your stand for Christ. You change the world. Yes, you change the world. Change the world by how you lived your life. You change the world by your stand for grace. You change the world. You change the world.
All right. You change the world. Yeah. All right. And good day, everyone. And welcome to today's session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles. Hi, my name is Oliver, and I am your temporary guide, your host, your coach for today's session. And I am so excited, so delighted to be with you. That introductory song was written about one of my dear mentors who's no longer with us, but has left an indelible impression on me, who was one that, like the song say, he was a world changer. He changed the world. And he said that in that song, it said that he changed the world in three aspects, or by three means. He changed the world by his love, by the love that he realized that he was. And so, like the nature of love is, he extended love to everyone, no exception. He walked in love. And secondly, it says that he changed the world by how he lived his life. He realized early in his life that true life is lived through purpose and intention. And he discovered early in life that the life that he was given unto him to be a light to the world. It was given to him to be a messenger and to bring people into an awareness of the love of God and the beauty of God and the absolute certainty that God had their best interests at heart and had given them everything in creation. That's the way he lived his life. He left everyone he entered into their presence much better off when they left his presence. He saw the face of Christ in all humanity and remembered God. This was his second way of changing the world. And finally, he changed the world by his stand for Christ. In other words, he never wavered from the truth that was true always. His stand for Christ, or stand for oneness, because Christ stood for oneness. In other words, Christ stood for the reality that all of us, our very life was in God, in this one God, in this one reality. And it was the one life that we all shared. And he stood for this without wavering. He understood that God really was in Christ, waking up all humanity and returning all humanity home, calling all humanity back home to himself. And so he never wavered from his purpose. He's never wavered from being the light of the world. He never wavered from his message, not only in words, but in deed. And this morning, I honor my beloved Bishop Mac Timberlake, in which that song was dedicated. He changed the world. Indeed, he helped change my life. And so moving on from that, today we're starting another 10 lessons in this session. And before we do, the Course in Miracle workbook has introduced another major theme that runs throughout the course. And it's very important for us to understand the course's idea, or the course's definition, on our subject for today. Today, we're going to talk about what is the world. What is the world? When you hear the word world, or when you use the word world, what are you perceiving? What are you conveying what the world is. When you think about the word world, when I say what is the world, what thought comes to mind? Do you think about the earth as being the world? Do you think about all the different planets as being the world? Do you think about, all the atmosphere, the stratosphere? Do you think about the physical earth itself with all its natural uh, content, dirt, grass, trees, oceans, mountains? What do you think of when you hear about the world? Do you think of people? Do you think of systems? Do you think of governments? When you hear the word world, do you think of, what do you think of? Ask yourself that question. Because obviously all of us got some idea of what we mean when we say the world. So if I say, go out into the world, what does that mean to you? That means that do you have to leave your current position to go out that the world is not in your present, that the world is somewhere else, but it's never in your presence, that it's something somewhere where you have to leave to go. So what is your concept of the world? So the Course talks about and makes comparison between the world and reality, in the world and unreality. The Course, in its use of the word world, what is it talking about? Is it talking about something that is physical? Is it talking about something that is matter? Or is it talking about an idea? Is it talking about an idea? And so we want to clear that up, because in understanding the Course's use of the word world will help us understand the message in such a way that it's helpful to us, because we're not just here sharing messages just to be sharing information, just to offer you another alternative or another religious path. That's not what this is about. This is about your individual, my individual search for peace. This is about your individual and my individual expanding our understanding of ourself, expanding our understanding of the community of humanity, expanding our awareness and understanding of the one that is responsible for all of this, the source of all of this. This didn't just fall out of the nothingness. Our awareness and consciousness didn't just happen to grow from, something that is nothing. But like I know that what we are a part of is something that is so infinite, that is so eternal, something that is so orderly and so purposeful. This thing called life. It's incredible. And most of us have only experienced it at a very low level, a very low vibration. If we really understood what we are involved with here, this awareness of a self, this awareness of a being, this awareness that, this infinite intelligence that we are a part of, if we really could really open ourselves up to that, there's no depth, no breadth, no end to what we can begin to experience right now. Not something in the after form life, but right now. There is only the now. There is only this moment. And so in this holy instant, as we look into today's lesson to gain more awareness and understanding and knowledge about what is the world and what does that mean to us, and how we can now take this awareness, take this expanded knowledge, and be about the purpose for which we find ourselves. Today we're going to talk about, or we're going to address the question, what is the world, from the Course in Miracles point of view. And remember, we said that this is Jesus's course. This course was downloaded in a way that is not natural. It was downloaded to humanity in its purest sense. And now we have this document to help us to renew our mind, to be transformed, so that we can experience the true reality of who we are, which here we call the real you at Truly Live, at Truly Foundation. What is that real you? What is that love that we share? What is that one being that we are? Let's get some more understanding here, so that our joy and our happiness and our fulfillment and contentment can be experienced in every moment. That's what we all seek. Happiness, joy, fulfillment, contentment, purposefulness. And we already have it. We already possess it. And the awareness of that, it comes through the knowledge. Grace and peace is multiplied to us through the knowledge, as the writer says. It is through the knowing, not just head knowledge, but through a direct experience of knowing who you are and why you are and where you are. And so this concept of the world, let's look here and get some more expanded awareness on this. So it says, what is the world? In the first statement, I love the first statement in these workbook lessons. They generally kind of answer the question in the very first statement, and then it goes on to expand upon that. And so here it says, the world is a false perception. The world is a false perception. Now, if you're like me, when I first read this and first engaged in this and thought through this, it was totally not the way I was thinking about what the world is, or what the world meant to me when I thought about the world. I always thought about the world was something that a place where I currently exist, the physical body exists, along with all these other bodies, and then all the other activities that go on in the lives of us is what we call the world. I saw it as just a collective series of events and activities that humanity engages in, and then all the systems that we have made ourselves in order to try to bring some order to our existence. But here it says that the world is a false perception. What is a perception? Perception has to do with our mental faculty that allows us to see something, hear something, taste something, smell something, feel something, and our interpretation of what we see, taste, touch, smell, feel, our interpretation of that is what we call perception. Perception is an interpretation. So it involves duality, where there's an object and a subject. Okay, perception has to do with the concept that there's two. So it goes beyond what the Course talks about, that the ultimate is oneness, or only reality is oneness. Where here it says perception, or the world, is a false perception. It's a false interpretation of an idea. It's really what it says here. So the world really has nothing to do with the physicality or the matter or the content. Look around you. Look in the room that you're in. Look wherever you are right now. Just look around you, and all you see is these multiple things that are separate. You see physical things. You see natural things. You see bodies. And you see different colors and different, I mean, you just see a multitude of complex different things all around you, multiple. So in this world, this three-dimensional world, there's not really, it doesn't communicate that there's just one. It communicates there's what? Multiplicity, that everything is separate and divided, and everything is different. That's what the natural interpretation that one would get if they were just placed here in the world. And it won't be long that we all come to a conclusion that everything is separate, everything is different. And that's based on what my senses are telling me. Perception has to do with your sensual capacity to look upon something, to hear something, to feel something, to taste something, or to touch something, and then you interpret it. You give a conclusion to that based on what the use of your senses. And those interpretations also are based on what? Mostly your past experience. For example, if I would say car, you would immediately have a perception of a car based on your past experience. If I would say ball, you would have a interpretation of what a ball is, a perception about a ball based on what your past experience. So what if I say book? You would have an interpretation, or you would have a perception about a book based on what your past experience. So when we look upon all these objects that are in the world, in most cases, we're not looking on the objects like the earlier lesson says. All we're doing is looking through our past. So we're not really looking on what we see presently. All we're doing is looking on what our past experience was. If I said light, if I said dog, if I said red light, all these thoughts, all these ideas, all these objects that I enumerated here, you have a past experience with them. And so when I say them, it conjures up to you a perception based on what your past experience. So you're not really looking at it in the present. And so here it says that the world, so that's what the world is. It is not, we're not talking about the physical things. We're not talking about the forms in this world. The concept of the world that the Course said it is the way we perceive based on our thinking, based on our experience. How are we perceiving? How are we perceiving the things that are ourselves? First of all, how are we perceiving the things that appear to be separate from us? How are we interpreting them? It has to do with what? Interpretation. And our interpretation generally comes from our past experience. And so if there's something that is there that we haven't seen, many cases we can't see it because we're blinded by what? Our previous experience. We're blinded by what? The past. And so here it says the world from the perspective of the Course has to do with our perceptions, and that our perceptions are false. The world is a false perception. In other words, the way we are looking upon everything in the natural, the way we're looking upon ourselves. He's saying we're looking at it from a perspective of falsehood. We're not looking at it from truth. We're not seeing it through the eyes of truth. We're seeing it through the lens of what the Course have taught us. We're looking at it through this lens of separation, or through the lens of the ego thought system. And let me kind of go on and explain that. So where are we? What is the world? The Course says that the world is a false perception. It's an idea that is not true. It's not real. I'm going to put a pin in it right there because I need to step away for just a minute. Hang in there. I'll be right back. All right. I apologize for that delay. Okay, here we are. So, what is the world? The world is a false perception. Just think about that for a minute. The world ain't the mountains. The world ain't the buildings. The world ain't the different countries and nations and states. From the Course perspective, but it says that the world is a false idea. It's a false perception. It's a misinterpretation. What we're seeing, what we're experiencing, what it says is that we're interpreting it through or from a perspective of separation and not from an idea of oneness. And let's look further into that. So we'll go back to the first part of the book. If you got the book in the course, I'm going back to the first part of the book in the preface, and on Roman number 10, page Roman number 10, there's a section here that says what it says. And here in this section, it explains in just 3 or 4 pages what the whole course is trying to is communicating to us. And if you could understand this section, what it says, then you don't have to read the whole entire 1,200, 1,300 pages. And so I want to go here because here will help us understand how the idea or the concept of world came into our thinking and the way we think about it. And so under this section, what it says, it starts out by saying nothing that is real can be threatened. In other words, reality is what it is. It can't be threatened. It can't be changed. It can't be altered. In other words, what is ultimate truth? What is ultimate knowledge? What is the ultimate law, the law of God, or what is ultimate love in God? We use those terms to describe that which is ultimate, that which is real, that which is eternal, that which is changeless and timeless and formless. We call it reality. He says, so that which is real cannot be threatened, meaning it cannot be changed. It's just like you're looking at something that's in front of you. And it doesn't matter how many times you say, for instance, if I sit a dog in front of you, it doesn't matter how many times you say, that's a cat, you're a cat, you're a cat. You can't change the reality that the nature and what's before you is a dog. You can say it. In other words, that which is real cannot be threatened. We can't alter reality. Truth cannot be altered. The law of God cannot be altered. God can't be altered. And what God creates cannot be altered or changed. It can't be threatened. That means you cannot be threatened. The real you, that is love, that we've talked about here on these lessons, you can't be changed. The real you, that is sinless and formless and timeless and guiltless. The real you, that is infinite and impersonal and self-aware, it can't be changed. What God created in eternity, which you are a part of, can't be changed. Who you really are can't be altered or changed. It can't die. It can't be born, and it can't die. Because what God created is himself. And God is life. And God is the one and only life. God is the one being and the only being. God is the one self and the only self. And it can't be altered or changed. And what God created is himself. And so you are God's self. You share the one self, the one being, the one life with God. All of us do. If we exist, and we do, because you're aware, you got consciousness, you're aware that you are a being. There's an I that you are aware of. There is a self that you are aware of. Well, that I, that self, that awareness, that consciousness that you are, that's you. That's the real you. And that is God. God doesn't have a separate life, and you got a separate life, and your neighbor got a separate life, and them down the street got a separate life. No, there's only one life. And we all share that. We all share it. And so that cannot be threatened ever. So the real you, which loves you, remains as God created you. You remain as God created you. You're perfect, you're whole, you're complete, you're innocent, you're holy. You're just like your creator. You're just like your father. And this is the truth that is true always. You will always be like your father. You will always have the awareness and the consciousness of God. Always. Because you and God are inseparable. You're inseparable. You can never be without God. You can never be without reality. You can never be without life. And this life that we're talking about, this being, this self that we're talking about, it's not the body self. The body self is just a temporary experience. That's not the real you. That's a temporary you. It's not a temporary you. It's a temporary existence. You cannot be threatened. Nothing real can be threatened. You are real. Because God is real. And you and God are one. This is so important. This will throw a tailspin in your religious thinking. This will throw a tailspin in the conditioning that we all been conditioned to understand. You are real, and your reality cannot be threatened. God is real, and God's reality cannot be threatened. And all this happened before there was any world. This was before the foundation of any physicality of matter. So nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. So that which God did not create, that which is not the thought of God, that which is not love, here it says it really doesn't, it's unreal and it doesn't exist. And so the idea that it exists is an illusion. All that which is temporary, it's just an illusion. It's not real. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. Through time, it fades away. It disappears. If you thought your birth date and your body identification was real, well, just wait. Eventually, what? It disappears. It's not real. It says nothing unreal exists. It says, so when we embrace these two realities, that we are one with God and can't be threatened, and that anything else or any other idea, it says that other idea is not real. It doesn't exist. It may be a temporary experience. It may be a dream experience. It may be a hallucination or a fascination experience. But it said it does not really exist. Only God exists. There's God and nothing else. And you and I are a part of that God and nothing else. There is no separation. It is so vital to your peace of mind. This is so vital to your sanity. This is so vital to your living in peace. In fact, the third line here says, herein lies the peace of God that you seek, and you embracing and us accepting these realities because they're not going to change. The real you is not going to change. It's not affected by anything in this what we call so-called world. It's not affected in any idea or thought outside and apart from God. Herein lies your peace. If you and I or any human is not experiencing peace, we're not experiencing peace because we're embracing another idea, like over here where it says a false perception. We are embracing something that is not true. and saying that it is true. And it is in us accepting that peace is lost, that peace is not experienced. So anytime that we're not experiencing complete contentment, complete peace, joy, happiness, it's because what? We are in a state of perceiving something falsely. And what we perceive falsely in many cases, that we are not one with God, that we're separate from love, that love is not present. That's where it comes from. Let's be real here. Any feeling or sense of weakness, of frailty, any sense of loneliness, any sense of not being valued, any sense of inferiority, any sense that you feel or sense that is not contentment and fulfillment, any threat or attack that you feel is coming from a place not out there, but it's coming from what it says here is a false perception. It's a false interpretation of reality. It's a belief that that which is real can be threatened. You believe that you're vulnerable. You're not vulnerable. You believe that you are a victim. You are not a victim. No, you are part of the source of all things. One moment, please. You are part of the source. You are a part of God. You are reality. You are one with reality. And so, what is the world? Now it appears that as we get into this, that everything is about what? Everything really that we are experiencing. It's not that we're experiencing out there, but everything that we're experiencing in our thought life. We're experiencing in the way we think. And our thinking is determining our perceptions. And our perceptions is determining our experiences. And our experiences are determining our results. And the result is either peace or fear. The results is really reality, which is love or peace, or unreality, which is fear or separation. We're either fully embracing the reality of our oneness and our absolute innocence and wholeness and completeness, or we're embracing separation, sin, consciousness, guilt, and fear, where we're seeing ourselves. We have a self-image of ourselves that is different than reality. And so we feel under threat. We feel under attack. We feel inadequate. All these feelings, all these emotional feelings are there to share with us that what we are to locate where our thinking. How are we thinking about ourselves? How are we thinking about each other? How are we thinking about our Creator? That is what is determining the results that we are experiencing. It's all happening in our what way of thinking. It's happening in the mind. So that's why this whole exercise that we're going through is about what? Not being conformed to this way of thinking, but being transformed by the renewing of the mind. It's the mind that needs healing. When the mind is healed, everything becomes healed. And so, this is how A Course in Miracles begin. It begins with a fundamental principle. It makes a fundamental statement. It sets a foundation for which the rest of the course follows. Just like God sets a foundation, and he said that foundation is love. And so with love as the foundation, it's easy to see that anything that is not of love is not of God. Excuse me there. Anything that is not the foundation of love is not the foundation of God. And so it says, the course, this is how the course begins. It lays a foundation that it makes a fundamental distinction between the real and the unreal. The course makes a distinction in its foundation that which is real, what cannot be threatened. That which is unreal, it does not exist. And from that, all experiences, all perception can now be made. If it's under a threat, if it's under attack, if it can be changed or altered, it's not real. It's telling you right now, it's not real. Don't buy into the illusion. Don't buy into the deception. If it's not eternal, if it's not infinite, if it's not love, it said it's not real. So it makes a fundamental distinction between the real and the unreal. What he's saying here is we need to know the difference between the real and the unreal. And it lays a foundation here of how that reality and unreality is defined. What is the basis for which you have and I have been what? Interpreting the world we see, interpreting what we see, what we hear, what we feel, touch, and taste. What is the basis for what our interpretation is? Is it based on this reality versus unreality, or is it based on what we've learned in the past, of what we've been taught? If we've been taught a false idea, that's why it says here that the world is a false perception based on what we've been taught. So here the course says it makes a fundamental difference between what is real and what is not real. It says it makes a distinction between what is knowledge and what is perception. There's a difference between knowledge and perception. If you know something, there's no need to interpret it. There's no need to have a perception about it. If I know what's behind door 1, I don't need to guess. I don't need to interpret. I don't need to look around me to get clues to what might be behind door 1. No, I don't have to guess. I know it. That's how reality is. Reality is a known thing. Perception has to do with interpretation. Knowing has to do with knowing. Like being has to do with being. But perception has to do with an interpretation. That means it has to do with object and subject. It has to do with duality. Knowing, there is only one. I know. I am. And so it is. The real you is a knowing. God is a knowing. Love is a knowing. Peace is a knowing. It's not an interpretation. Happiness is a knowing. It's not an interpretation. It needs no other support. It needs no other event or activity or sensation or feeling or relationship. It needs nothing. That which is real needs nothing, because that which is real is everything. The real you are everything. You have need of nothing. All things are yours. Why? Because you are reality, like your Father. But you might be asking, well, why am I having so much difficulty in the world with lack and with, struggles and suffering and this? Why am I having so much different? It has to do with it would say the world is a false perception. We're operating in a falsity. We're not seeing and understanding clearly. We don't have clarity on reality. That's what this course is about, bringing us clarity about reality, especially where you are concerned and I'm concerned, the real you. Because we think we're this body self. We're not. We think that we're that person that was born on a certain day in a certain hospital and given a certain social security number to parents and to a family. And we've grown up and we have a timeline. We have a personal history. And we think that's who we are. That is not who you are. That's just a temporary experience that you're having. Who you are is the real you that is unalterable, unchangeable. Who you are is truth. Who you are is knowledge. There's no multiple choice. There's no scramble. Who you are is fixed and cannot be altered. You are the creation of God. You are the innocent. You are the very presence. You're the very self that God is, the very being that God is. That's who you are. And when we embrace that, we embrace the peace of God. We have peace. We have peace with ourselves, and we have peace with all living things. But when we embrace a false idea or a false perception about who we are, we have opened the door up to all kinds of suffering and pain and anxiety and struggles and other misperceptions and other illusions and other insane ideas and wild imaginings. And so it says, knowledge is truth. Knowledge is truth. Truth is unalterable. It says knowledge is truth, and knowledge is under one law, the law of God. It says truth or reality is unalterable, and it's eternal. It can't be changed, and it's eternal. It has no beginning and has no end. It says it is unambiguous. There's no multiple choice. There's only one choice, only one reality. This is the difference between real and unreal that the Course lays at the very foundation. It says reality can be unrecognized, but it cannot be changed. It applies to everything that God created. So if God didn't create it, it's not reality. If man made up something without the thoughts of God, it's not reality. It's unreality, and eventually it will disappear, because it's only a temporary, illusionary idea. I'm getting real with you this morning. We're going deep this morning. He says it applies to everything that God created. You think God created a world that's fallen apart, full of sickness and disease and anger and fighting? And you think God creates something like that? That's not possible. It's not possible for you to get oranges out of an apple seed. Therefore, it is not possible for you to get hate and love. It's not possible for you to get hate out of love. It's not possible for you to get a world of separation and division out of love. It's not possible. So it's what God created. I know there's places where it's written God created the world. God did this to the world. Well, just listen up. Let's listen up here. It says, and only what He created is real. Only what God creates is real. Only what reality creates is real. That's the principle. Every seed produces after its own kind. So if this world is a product of God, we're in trouble. We are absolutely in trouble. But this world is not a product of God. This is a product of humanity. This is a product of a false perception. This is a product of an idea of separation and duality. And so it says it applies to everything that God created, and only what God created is real. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process. Reality is beyond time and process. What God created, what God is, all that transcend time and process. That's why you see certain writings said that before the foundation of the world, God did this, God did that. Before the foundation of the world, before there was any world, before there was any physicality, before there was any matter, God did this. In the beginning, in eternity past, God did this. So what they're saying is, in reality, before this illusionary world, this false concept, this false idea became alone, he said God created. God extended His very self. And when God had finished creation, it was done. It was done. and it was finished. It was complete, and it was good. It was very good. And at the end of God's creation, there was no matter, there was no form, there was no earth, there was no time, there was no limitation. It was only the infinity and the eternity and the infinite state of being that God is. There was only peace, there was only love, there was only joy. There was nothing lacking, nothing missing, nothing broken, nothing sick, nothing dying. When God finished creation, it was done. And it was complete, and it was whole, and it had endlessness in its nature. So where did this idea of a limited world come from? Of an individuated self come from? Where did these ideas come from? False perception. Came from a tiny, we talked about it yesterday, came from a tiny mad idea of what would it be like to be separate from God. Is there anything outside of God? Is there anything outside of reality? Let's go and find out. Let's go on a prodigal journey. Let's leave the garden. That idea, that tiny idea, mad idea, was responsible for all of this. All of this came out of that tiny mad idea. And we say, voila, what is it outside like to be outside of God? And the prodigal son found out, that he ended up what? In no man's land, in the pig pen. Adam and Eve walked out of the garden. What is it? What is it outside the garden? And they found themselves what? On a path of pain and suffering. And so it says there are no, so this reality that we're talking about, it's not that something that you can learn, it's something that just is. It said it has no opposites. There is no opposites in reality. There's no opposites to your real self. There's no opposite to love. But we find ourselves in this place where everything is opposite. There's nothing but polarity, up and down and in and out and white and black and cold and hot, and everything in this seemingly time and space has opposites. So is this real? Here it says there are no opposites in reality, but we find ourselves in what we call a three-dimensional space where everything has opposites. So is it real? And here it said, if it's not real, it doesn't exist. And then we go on and finish this reality by saying it has no opposite, it has no beginning, and it has no end. So anything that has a beginning and end is saying it's not real. It's not part of reality. It doesn't exist. And everything in this world has a beginning and end. Even this false self that we think that we are, it has a beginning and an end. So it's saying that is not reality. That is not you. That is not. It's not reality. It says it has no beginning and no end. And in this space that we're in, all the time we see things coming and going. Here it's saying it's not real. Because in reality, nothing comes and goes. Everything just is. Everything remains as God created it. Even you and me, we have remained as God created us. We have not been impacted by the unreality or by the false perception that it says the world is. It says that reality merely is, and we can't do a thing about it. We can't do a thing about the reality of our oneness, of our innocence, of our wholeness, of our joy and peace, of our lack of scarcity, of our just complete contentment in what God created us to be. We can't do anything about it. And I'm so glad about that. I'm so glad I can be born into a world and embrace all these other ideas and change myself and have this experience of a lack of love, a lack of peace, a lack of joy, a lack of happiness, a lack of purpose. I'm so glad none of that alters my real self, the real you, the real me. That is love. I'm glad about it. And then it says here, the world of perception, on the other hand. So in reality is this idea that is true, that can't be changed. And it's called God. It's called you and me. That's reality. But here it says, on the other hand, well, there should not be another hand. If reality is all there is, then where's the other hand coming from? It's coming from a tiny mad idea. It's coming from a thought. And so it says, on the other hand, it says the world of perception. Oh, okay. Now the course says it makes a fundamental difference between reality and unreality. It has explained what reality is, and reality always is. It always is. Who you are always is. Who God is always is. Who all humanity is always is. The state of being of love and happiness, joy and peace and contentment and infinite intelligence and infinity and eternity, it always is. That never changes. Well, what is this on the other hand? What is this idea that's coming? I shouldn't look anywhere else. Like Adam and Eve shouldn't have looked outside of the garden. They shouldn't look. They should have been confident. Well, it's a story now. Remember, this is a story. And the story is here to help us wake up. But if they would have been content, if they would have realized that all that there is was in the garden, there was nothing else. There was nothing outside the garden. If the prodigal son would have realized that there's nothing outside his father's home, he never would have had that prodigal journey. He never would have had the pain and the suffering. Humanity that had all the bodies that was born through the Adam and Eve lineage, which we have that experience through the body that we appear to be associated with. All the pain and suffering of humanity came as a result of that idea of not being content and fulfilled when there was nothing else. That was all. We had everything. That's what the story is given to us for, to teach us and to show us what reality is. And the reality is nothing has changed. We remain as God created us. It was all a dream. It was all a movie. You're not a sinner. You're not going to hell. You're not being chased by a devil or a demon, a lion, a tiger, or a bear. No. You are at home with God where you have never left when you wake up from that dream. So the world of perception, on the other hand, notice now, there's a world of perception and then there's reality. This experience that we're having as human beings, this is the world of perception. On the other hand, let's see what it says. It says, the world of perception, on the other hand, is the world of time and change. We know about that, right? We're in a place where that's run by time and it's run by change. Time is moving and everything is changing all the time. Nothing remains as it was created. Everything is changing. It's changing form. It's changing. It is changing in this world of perception. So in this world of perception, there is no stability. What we described as reality is fixed. It's nothing but stability. See the difference? And so it says, on the other hand, this world of perception, or this world where you have to interpret things. That's what perception is. Where there's a world of duality. There's a subject and an object, and you got to interpret what you see, you feel, you taste, you touch, you sense, you smell. He says, this world of time and change of beginning and ending. So in this world, there's time, there's change, there are beginnings and there are endings. See, it's unstable. This is an unstable world. This is an unstable idea, a perception. It's an unstable interpretation, because all of this is coming from our interpretation, based on not reality, but not based on not oneness, but based on unreality and based on separation, where there's more than one. This ideal comes from embracing an idea that there's more than one, when in reality, there's only the one. There's only one of us. We all are the one being. There's only one God. There's only one source. There's only one idea. There's only one truth. And when we don't accept the reality of the oneness that we share, we have to make up something else. And what we made is a world of perception. What we made is a false interpretation. And this is what we're living in from a human standpoint. It says it is based on interpretation. So everything in that which is not real is based on an interpretation. There is no interpretation in reality. There's no interpretation in heaven. There's no interpretation in God, and there is no interpretation in you. You are who you are. You are who God created, and that's fixed, never to be altered. You are the holy home of God. You are the innocent one. You are the whole one. You are the holiness of God. You are what God is. You are what God is. You are the peace of God. You are every aspect. You are the very essence of life. Yes, you are. All humanity. It says, it is based on interpretation, this unreality we're talking about, not on facts. See, in reality, it's a fact. It is a fact that you and God are one. It is the fact that you have the mind of God. It is the fact that you are an idea of God. It is a fact that you are infinite, impersonal, and a self-aware being that God is, and you share that being with God. It says, it is based on interpretation, not on fact. It is a world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death, sickness and disease, pain, suffering, and every war, fighting, and everything that we see in this world, hatred, vitriol, everything that we see that is unloving in the world. It is coming from this idea of unreality. It's coming from this idea of separation. It's coming from an idea that we're separate from God, that there's more than one. All this is producing the world we see. In the world that we've been conditioned in. That's why Romans chapter 8 is so emphatic about this statement. Be not conformed to this world. Don't be conformed to the false perception of this world. Don't be conned to think that you are this individual, separated self, separated from God and all others, separated from all living things. Don't be conned into thinking that way. He said, don't be conformed to this world. Because if you are conformed to this world, then you're subject to all of the false perceptions of this world. All the pain and suffering, all the ups and downs, the in and out. You're subject to all the duality, is what he's saying. You're subject to all the duality, the birth and the death, all the things it talks about here. The loss, you're gonna be subject to scarcity, loss, separation, and death. If we embrace this as our reality. If we stay asleep to this as being reality. If we only perceive in the world from our natural point of view. He says, you're going to be what? Subject to what? All of these other ideas, all these other perceptions that come out of the one idea of separation. It says, it applies to everything that God created. It applies to everything that God created, and only what God creates is real. No, I lost my place. It says, we're talking about the world of perception. And in the world of perception, it's the world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death. It is learned rather than given. It is selective in its perceptual emphasis. Like there's a whole menu, all these options that we got. That's part of this world of perception. It says it is unstable. The world of perception is unstable in all of its functioning. That's why we see systems and we see ideas that are not God ideas, that they may seem and start out good, but eventually they fall apart. Why? Because they're not real. And we try to patch things up. We try to keep things up. We try to hold on to traditions and hold on to ideas that are unreal, and they're falling apart. And it generates anxiety and fear in us because we're placing value in that which is not real. It says, it is learned rather than given, selective in its perceptual emphasis, unstable in its functioning, and inaccurate in its interpretation. Our interpretation of what life is, who we are, what God is, what humanity is, what the world is, our interpretation of that, it's what has caused the world to be what it is. The experience of life to be what it is. Put it to you that way. But the experience of life should be love and joy and peace and joy in the holiness, the holy life that we truly are. But it's not that way because our minds have gone on a journey, a prodigal, looking for something, looking for what we already are out in a world of perception. And we only find pain and suffering. Unhappiness, hurt, betrayal, all the things that in our human experience that seem so hurtful. And then we think in our back of our mind, say, why did God do this to me? Why did God create a world like this? And we get mad at God. And God has nothing to do with this. This is our own doing. We did this. We made this, because we don't create. All creation is over. All creation is over and done. All creation happened before this world of illusion was ever dreamed up. So this is a product of our what? This is a product of our giving our allegiance over to that which is not real, that which does not exist. And that's why we vacillate with peace. That's why we're looking for peace. That's why we know there's something wrong, that there is something that has gone wrong. And what has gone wrong is in our thinking. What has gone wrong is that humanity has fallen asleep. In Genesis, in the first book of the Bible, it says that Adam was put to sleep. Adam went to sleep. If nowhere in there it said that Adam ever woke up. And the awakening does happen to Adam when you and I individually wake up to the truth of our reality. That is the waking up. That is the awakening. That is the moment of enlightenment. That is the rebirth. And it happens when we come to realize that we were operating in a system of false perception. That we were identifying ourselves as a body. We was identifying ourselves as, as this birthed self. That's not who we are. And we wake up to the reality that no, our existence, our creation was before this very world was even done. It was before time and space. That's who we are. We are eternal, infinite beings, impersonal, and self-aware. And so from knowledge and perception, from reality and unreality, from knowledge and perception, from reality and unreality, respectively, two distinct thought systems arose which are opposite in every respect. The truth, reality, God, love is opposite of what we made in a world of perception. Completely opposite. So there was a thought system arose from reality, and then there was a thought system that arose from what? Unreality, from the world of perception. Came a thought system, a belief system. One is real and the other what? Is unreal. And when we operate in the unreal, we get what the unreal is offering us. And we know what that is. We felt it. We've experienced it. We've actually promoted it. Some of us are still promoting inequality, still promoting separation, still promoting division, still promoting judgment, unforgiveness. That's the thought system of the world of perception versus the world of love, or the world of God, or the world of reality. And so it says there's two thought systems that come out of that which is real and that which is not. It says, in the realm of reality, in the realm of knowledge, no thoughts exist apart from God. In reality, there's God thoughts and there's nothing else. So anytime we think apart from God, or we think thoughts or ideas that are not loving ideas, when they're not God's ideas, it said we're creating a whole new thought system. We call the ego thought system. So we really not thinking unless we're thinking with the thoughts of God. The thoughts of God are only loving. The thoughts of God are only oneness. The thoughts of God is only reality, joy, peace, infinite, eternal. But when we think without using the thoughts of God, we create a self, we create a world, we create a system that will not make us happy. We create our own lack of peace. We create a world, we create a thought system that only brings anguish and anxiety and fear and damnation and judgment. It brings all the foolish, crazy, insane acts you see going on in the world. The fussing and the fighting, the racial, the national, the international strain and indifferences that you see in the world is coming from the idea that we have created another way of thinking, or a system of thinking that is antithetical or opposite to love, opposite to God. And here it says we're really not thinking. Any thought that is apart from God is not really thinking. It's insanity. It's what it's saying it is. And so humanity have experienced its own insanity by refusing to think the thoughts of God, which are real. It says, in the realm of knowledge, no thoughts exist apart from God, because God and his creation share the one will. There's only one will, and that's God's will. That's what Jesus came to tell us. I came to do thy will, O God. He said, not thy will, but let your will be done. He said, when you pray that the will of God be on earth as it is in heaven. Why? Because there's only one will. When we try to make up another will, make up another purpose, make up another idea, we see the mess that we make. You see the mess that the world's in its politics, in its business, in its arts, in its sports. Just think about all these different areas of life: art, sports, health and wellness. Look at the relationships in the world: personal relationship, organizational relationships, world relationships. Look at money and what that influence is, and time. Look at our careers, our jobs. Look at the competition, this competitive nature that we've created. Think about the world and how hard it can be from this idea that we have made up, this system that we have made up. It is hard. It can't be counted on. It's so much uncertainty. When you think you're on top of the world today, guess what? You can be bottom tomorrow. Do you think that is God's idea of peace and stability and certainty? No. This is coming from what we built. This is coming from the ideas that we have made. This is coming from us trying to hold this in place instead of embracing the reality of the truth. And we have done it over and over and over again. History shows us, time shows us. There is no peace outside of God. There is no happiness outside of the thoughts of God. There is no joy. There is no purpose. There is no self-concept or self-image of ourselves that we are pleased with and happy with outside of God, outside of the oneness. And God said there is only the one, and you are part of the one. But we have tried everything that we could think of, using even the intelligence of God to try to create a world and make peace. And it's not happening. It only happens when we wake up to the reality of our oneness. It only happens when we wake up to the reality of the knowing of ourselves and our neighbor. And that love is all there is, and God is all there is. And so now you got two thought systems. One is reality, the other one is what? Unreality. One will versus multiple wills. One self versus what? 8 billion selves. How is that working? How's it working in our relationships? How is it working in our politics? How's it working in our world relationships? How is it happening? How's it working out in the arts, in the science? How's it working out in sports? Every area that you look into, we see devastation. We see insane events and activity occurring. Why is that? Because man is operating in the false perception of this world. The world is a false perception. Our interpretation is wrong. We're starting from a place of separation, and you can never start from a place of separation and end up in oneness. No, we have to go back where we made the error and start from a place of oneness. Go back where we made the error and start from a place of reality, a place of knowledge, a place of truth, a place of one law, a place of love that is unalterable and unchangeable, a place of reality. There is only the one, and you are that one. There is no separation. There is no inequality. There is no difference between you and God. There's no difference between you and your neighbor. There's no difference. All these differences that we're trying to navigate, race, economic, social status, differences in nationality and countries, and all these things that we are trying to navigate life through. Painful, isn't it? Yeah. But when you wake up to the truth, oh my God, the peace was always there. The love was always there. The joy, the happiness, the fulfillment, the self-image of yourself as being the very expression of God was always there. It says the world of perception, however, is made by the belief in opposites. Notice now, the world of perception is the belief in opposites and separate wills, in perceptual conflict with each other and with God. How much conflict goes on with each other and our conflict with God? A lot of us have a problem with God. We know we have a problem with each other, but we have a problem with God. This is the world of perception. This is a false perception that we're saying that what the world is. It's a false interpretation. It says, what perception sees and hears appears to be real. It appears to be real because it permits into awareness only what conforms to the wishes of the perceiver. This leads to a world of illusions. It leads to a world of illusions. A world which needs constant defense, precisely because it is not real. And all this is coming from a false idea, a false perception. All this is coming from a tiny mad idea of separation. And said it leads to a world of illusions where precisely there is always a need for constant defense. You got to defend yourself, defend your idea, defend your actions. In reality, there is no defense. Why? Because there is no separation. There is no disagreement. There is no conflict. Because that world is based on what? Reality, oneness. But when we try to make a world based on what? Multiplicity, a world made based on separation, a world based on body identification, we make a mess. It says, when you have been caught in this world of perception, you are caught in a dream because it's not reality. It says here that nothing unreal exists, so it has to be a dream. It has to be a fantasy. It has to be hallucination. It has to be vain imaginings. It has to be a fantasy. Here it says we're caught in a world of dreams. When we're in a world of perception, where we're trying to interpret something based on separation. When we're trying to interpret reality based on unreality. Now you see why the world has developed and has progressed the way it has. Because that's been man's perception, man's attempt to make something that is different than reality. Now it makes sense, right? It should make sense why we have been engaged in this, how we got to be born into this, and how we bought into this because we were conditioned into this way of thinking. We were conditioned in this way of interpretation. We were conditioned into this way of perceiving. And the only way out is to have a change of mind. It's the only way out is to come to a point where you say, there's got to be a better way. And there is a better way. And there's only one way. And that one way is love. That one way is reality. That one way is the real you, embracing that which is real only. Now you see why the Course makes a fundamental difference between what? Reality and unreality. It starts there. It has to start there. So we have to examine how we're thinking, what we're thinking, why we're thinking this way, how we embrace these ideas. Where did they come from? Is it adding to or taking away from my peace, from my joy, from my completion, my wholeness, my reality? So we have to question everything that we have thought and believed. Here the Course said we just let it go and we start from a place of reality. It's just that simple. And so it says, we cannot escape without help. We cannot escape this dream, this world of perception without help. We need help. Help, God, help. It says, because everything that we sense show us the witnesses to the reality of the dream. This world will mirror back to you. It mirror back to us every day if we're looking through the eyes of the ego thought system. It will mirror back to us to keep us locked into this world of perception. This world, it will keep us locked into this dream, this world of perception. It'll keep us on this cycle of birth and death. It keeps us on this cycle of ups and downs, in and out. It keeps us on this cycle of having just a little experience of love, or just a little experience of peace, just a little. It gets us locked into this world of coming and going. Everything is moving. Nothing is stable. Nothing is certain. This world that just builds and builds on keeping us in a state of anxiety and fear and guilt and judgment. How we judge each other, judge the world, how we judge everything. This is the world of perception. This is the dream that we're caught up in. And it's in here the Course says we cannot escape without help. Because everything that we sense show us the witness that this is real. But God has provided the answer. God is the answer. God has provided us a way out of the dream. God has provided us a way out of the pain and suffering. God has provided us a way out of a world that lacks love, that lacks peace. God has provided the way. He said, God has provided the answer, the only way out, and the true helper. God has provided the way. He's provided, he said, God has provided the way out, the helper, and the answer. And let's see what that is. It says, it is the function of God's voice. It is the function of the voice of God, the still small voice. It's the function of your permanent guide. You remember I said, I'm only a temporary guide, a temporary host, a temporary coach. Why? Because there's the permanent guide, the permanent host, the permanent coach is within all of us. And it's in the form of the voice that speaks for God, not the voice that you hear in your ear, but there as a light to lead and guide us into all truth. To lead and guide us into all reality, back to reality, back home. So God placed the answer within us to wake up to the reality and to escape this maze, this ego thought system, this world of illusion. He says, it is in the form, it is the function of his voice, his Holy Spirit, his whole and complete spirit, his spirit of truth that is within all of us to mediate between the two worlds. So there is a helper within all of us. There's a helper here in this world of perception to help us out of the world of perception. It's inside of us. He calls it the whole spirit, his whole spirit, his voice, his light. God's spirit, God's attitude is in you now. And we become awake and aware to it when we open ourselves up to, like the prodigal son, I'm going back home. I come to myself. And all of us come to that point. Why? Because God guaranteed that all of us will come to that point. Why? Dreams doesn't last forever. Unreality, it doesn't last at all. It doesn't even exist. So we must wake up to the truth at some point. We must wake up to our reality. We must wake up to the oneness that we share. It says, so it is his voice that mediates between the two worlds. One is real and one is not. He says he can do this because while on the one hand, God knows the truth. The Holy Spirit knows the truth. That God inside of you knows the truth. And on the other hand, that God inside of you, that helper, that voice, that Holy Spirit, it recognizes our illusions. It knows the truth, but at the same time, it recognizes our illusion where we are walking in deception. It recognizes that. That spirit, that God that's in us, it knows when we're walking after the unreal. It recognizes it, but it knows the truth. So that's why it can guide us, lead us, and guide us into all truth. Jesus said that he came and he sent the spirit of truth in us so we can lead us and guide us into all the truth, all reality. He says, it is the Holy Spirit's goal to help us escape from the dream world by teaching us how to reverse our thinking. So it's in our thinking, reverse our thinking and unlearn our mistakes. So we got here by a way of thinking and a way of mistakes, because our thinking led to mistakes. And he said the only way out of it is to allow that God that's inside of you. He calls the Holy Spirit, which is your real self, which is God too. The Holy Spirit, you and God are one. It's not like three separate entities or three separate selves. It's really the one self. Because remember, there's only one. So that one is in the dream and the illusion with you, standing ready, arms stretched out to help you, like the father when his arm was stretched out when the prodigal son was heading back home. He's there. The Holy Spirit, your real self, God, all are one, are there helping you, want to navigate you out of the dream into reality. It said, it is the Holy Spirit goal to help us escape from the dream world by teaching us how to reserve or reverse our thinking and unlearn our mistakes. Forgiveness is the Holy Spirit's great learning aid. I told you, the greatest learning aid, the greatest gift we have here on earth is forgiveness. Anyone that's not walking in forgiveness, what you're doing and what you're saying is, I don't want to come out of the world of separation. I don't want to come out of the dream. I want to continue to dream. I want to continue to suffer. I want to continue to feel like a victim. I want to continue to feel vulnerable. That's what we're saying when we don't walk in forgiveness. Forgiveness is our only way out of the dream. Your only way back to sanity is forgiveness. When we see the crazy stuff in the world happening, it's happening because people are refusing to forgive. When we see people hurt one another, kill one another, oppress one another, it's because they are refusing to wake up. It's insanity. I know. Forgiveness is huge. It seems like it's something so simple, but it's huge. Your freedom lies in rest. Your waking up rest on forgiveness. Forgiveness is the Holy Spirit great learning aid to bring this thought reversal about. There is no change of mind if there's no forgiveness. It's the thought reversal that we need to go from fear to love. And we go there through forgiveness. That's the simple formula. That's the code. That's the simplicity of life. That's why Jesus said in his most agonizing moment when he could attack and threaten and judge, he said, Father, I forgive them, for they know not what they do. Why? He was choosing for love. Anytime we forgive, we're choosing for love. He says, however, this course has its own definition of what true forgiveness really is, just as it defines the world in its own way. The world we see merely reflects our own internal frame of reference. The world we see is a reflection of which thought system you have chosen. The thought system of reality, of oneness, or the thought system of what? Unreality or separation. You know which thought system you have chosen by the results that you're getting. Are you standing in a place of peace and joy and happiness and fulfillment and completion, where there's no fear, no anxiety, where you see yourself as God sees you? You're not a sinner. No guilt. That comes from a simple choice to let it go, to forgive the world, to let the world go, to let the idea of separation go, and to embrace the only reality that there is. So the world that we see merely reflects our own internal frame of reference. And now we go back and I end this lesson. What is the world? Now I ask you, what is the world? And it's going to make a whole lot more. This is going to really, really hit home now. It says, what is the world? The world is false perception. It's a false perception. And that false perception comes from us making a decision to embrace an idea or a thought system that is not real versus the only reality that there is. And in embracing a thought system that is not real, we are operating from a false self that's not real. The experience that we're having in this world, when we experience this world from a body mind perspective, from a perception, from a point of view that we're separate individual selves, and we don't, but we're not of the one self. It is that which has created the pain and the suffering, the sickness and the disease, all the horrific things that are in the world. We're not wanting to wake up from the dream. How much pain, how much more pain, how much more suffering will it take before we begin to question our belief system, before we begin to question our identity, before we get to question being conformed to this world? But we'll all come to a point where we say, well, there must be a better way. And God said there is. You need to let go of that false perception that you have of yourself, of the world, of me. And you need to embrace the reality of your oneness with me, your innocence with me, your infinite, self-aware, impersonal self that you share with me. And come on back to reality. So it says, what is the world? It is a false perception. It is born of error. We have made a mistake. We made an error. Notice now, we haven't sinned. We just made an error in our choosing. There is no such thing as sin. The Course teaches this. See, that false system would teach you that sin is real. And sin brings about judgment. And sin brings about fear. And you deserve punishment. That's where that thought pattern comes from. And it'll bring a lot of pain and suffering to you. But there is no sin. We made an error. Not individually, but we made it collectively. When we didn't laugh at the tiny mad idea of separation. We should have laughed at that idea. The prodigal son should have laughed at the suggestion that he take his inheritance and leave his daddy. Adam and Eve should have laughed at the idea of God hiding something from them or keeping something away from them. They should have laughed at that. But they didn't. So collectively, we made that decision as one. So, but there's no one's to blame. Why? Because if what we selected is not real, we ain't selected anything, and we haven't. If what we selected is unreality, well, we didn't really make no selection. Because in reality, there is no selection. There is no multiple choices. There's only the one. So we made an error by entertaining the idea of separation, entertaining the idea that we're separate from each other, entertaining the idea that we're separate from God. But now we embrace the truth that there is nothing but the one. And we are part of that one being, that one self, that one life that is eternal, that is free, that is innocent, that is whole, that is complete, that is loving. That is who we are. And now we look not through a glass darkly, but face to face. We see the reality of a world that is one. So, false perception. The world is a false perception that is born of an error, and it has not left its source. What is the source? That idea, separation. What's the source of the error? A tiny mad idea, separation. What's the problem? The belief in separation. What's the answer? There is no separation, which the Course calls the atonement. The moment the idea of what would it be like to be separate from God came up into the mind of what God created, the answer came immediately. There is no separation. There is no other. There is no option. There is no separation. Everything remains that God created it. That's the answer. That's where peace relies. That which is unreal doesn't exist. That which is real can't be threatened. It says, it will remain no longer than the thought that gave birth. It's cherished. So we no longer cherish the idea of separation. We no longer give any credence to the idea of separation. We're all one. When the thought of separation has been changed to one of true forgiveness, will the world be seen in quite another light, and one which leads to truth, where all the world must disappear. The false perception will disappear, and all its errors will vanish. All of our errors will vanish. No judgment, no hell, no devils. All that was part of the false perception. We made all that stuff up too. In reality, there's only love. There's only love. You are only love. The real you loves you. Why? Because the real you is love. There's only love. That is what we've been looking for. And that is what has always been. When the blocks have been removed to the awareness of that love is always present. It's always present. Love has always been shining within you. You are the shining star of love. Yes, you are. And all that other illusions of separation and sin, guilt, and fear, it just disappears out of your thinking. And now you embrace the peace of God. You're not looking for trouble or evil or devils on every corner, because there is none. You're only looking through the eyes of reality now. Now its source has gone. What is the source? The tiny mad idea of separation and our belief in it. See, if there's no belief in the illusion has nowhere to go. If we don't value something that is unreal, it has no life of its own. The ego has no life of its own. Once we withdraw our allegiance, nothing outside of reality has even the remote energy to even display itself. Now its source is gone and its effects are gone as well. So what is the world? The world is a false perception. What is the correction to that? True perception. How do we get to true perception? We forgive the world of false perception. We let it go. And when we let that go, what's all that is left, all that is revealed, is the love that we share. All that is revealed is the self, the being that we share with God and with each other. All that is left is a lovely world where all is one. Where there's no beginning, there's no end, there's no fussing, there's no fighting, there's no pain, no suffering, no sickness, no disease. It is only the life that we share as one. That has no beginning and it has no end. And it's always present. So now you understand the course when it says the world. World is a way of thinking, a way of being. The world of God is what? Our oneness. The world of perception is pain and suffering. Which do you choose? Choose you this day who you will serve. Oneness, or will you serve separation? Will you serve equality or inequality? Will you forgive your brother, or will you hold on to your grievances? That which you choose, you'll know. Why? Because the effects of that will be quite evident. One will be peace, and the other will be sorrow. Who do you choose? All right. Thank you so much. I didn't finish this, but I might do a little bit more on it. We'll see. Mm. Let us not rest content until the world has joined our changed perception. Let us not be satisfied until forgiveness has been made complete. And let us not attempt to change our function, which is forgiveness. We must save the world, for we who made it, notice now, for we who made it, we made this false perception. For we who made it must behold it through the eyes of oneness, through the eyes of Christ. That what we made to die can be restored to everlasting life. So with our change in perception, from false perception to true perception. What is true perception? Looking through the eyes of oneness, looking through the eyes of Christ, seeing all things as one. He said we can restore even that which was false to everlasting life. We have that ability to change everything that is opposite into its reality, which always been there. Thank you so much. What a great day. What a great lesson. Let's keep moving on our journey of transformation. And we'll see you on the next session. Thank you so much.